sure if you used both. Like, I'm McPhail Charon. I use both myself. Livingston Perkins is a single mama to three strong and spirited children. Jessica is a passionate writer, designer, tinkerer, truth teller, and connector. She believes in the power of connection to yourself and to others through play. Having a keen understanding of many different formal and non-traditional educational and learning methodologies, she created her own handmade toy company to help little ones everywhere explore their imaginations and the world around them. Personally, she has persevered through tumultuous relationships and difficult life decisions, but broke free from the clouds of post-traumatic stress, anxiety, and depression by becoming grounded in love, acceptance, and compassion. Here is a journey of self-directed empowerment, and through her story, she helps to enable moms everywhere to live and parent intentionally and bravely, the playful way. I love it. I love that description. That sounds awesome.
Thank you.
So we go back a little bit. We've been, we've kind of known each other on Facebook for a little while. So I was excited when I was like, why don't I have Jessica on and let's talk about all the cool stuff that you do? Because I bought a bunch of cool toys from you for Christmas for my children. So, I would love to share all of your creative, thinkings and processes and all that stuff. And I would love to hear how did you get to all of this? Like, what is your story of how you got to here?
I feel like it's such a story. Like, even as a child, I was hugely a maternal person. I was the best babysitter on the block. I took the babysitter, the babysitters club course, and I was CPR certified, and I came with a box of toys and music, and just I loved children. I loved women who are pregnant and who are nursing and who had little infants, and I was the kid that was swaying back and forth. Even if I didn't have a baby on my hip, I would just have always been that way. In high school, I took early childhood and development class, which they offered in our home economics department, which isn't really a thing anymore. But I was so blessed to have this amazing teacher and mentor, and I dove right in. I loved all of the aspects of it, not just interacting with children, but learning the developmental psychology about learning and about, their growth and development and the ages and stages throughout pregnancy and then after into elementary. And it just was so fascinating to me and what these young, what we humans are capable of doing once we kind of enter the real world. And then after that, I went to college. I went to Drexel University and I studied psychology. And with a focus I always took whatever courses I could in early childhood and development because that was just where my passion was. And I also graduated with a degree in studies of media, art, and design. And I had no idea kind of how these things would intermingle, but I kind of followed the breadcrumbs of my passions, and I was fortunate enough to do that. I married right out of college, literally. I graduated and less than a month later, got married. And then we started a family super young. I knew that I wanted to be a mom, and we intentionally decided to do that. And I was a stay-at-home mom. And then from there, I would sew things. My mom taught me how to sew when I was little, and she was always a tinkerer and a putterer. She liked to I always would say she was Miss Fix-It in our house. Anything that broke, she could fix, and she taught me how to use tools, and she taught me how to use saws and how to use the sewing machine. And so I just had a lot of experience with those things. And when my oldest daughter, Layla, would take naps, I would just make things for her. And I was, like I said, I was always interested in learning. And so I would make, things so that we could have conversations about colors or numbers or sorting, all of these different kinds of things. Eventually, my friends told me that I should open up shop. And I was like, I don't know, nobody would want to buy my, I'm just doing it for fun. Nobody would want to buy this stuff. And then, I don't know, I'm also into photography a little bit. So one nap time, I snapped some photos, and Etsy was relatively new back then. And so I put some photos up on Etsy and wrote some descriptions. And sure enough, it was a sale. And it just has grown and grown from there. And as my children have aged and developed, the product line has expanded too. And then I had a second child and a third child. So I got to kind of reinvent from the earlier years all over again, knowing what I learned from the older ones. And then as they aged a little bit older, we live in the city, we live in Philadelphia, and from pretty early on, we had considered homeschooling, and it just seemed like a good fit once once we were rooted in the city and we came to like kindergarten age. And I truly believe that children make sense of their world through sensing their world. So just having any and all experiences and opportunities to make messes, to explore art, to explore music, to explore their bodies, and reading and literacy, like all of these things are so important. And just having experiences, you don't know what you like until you experience it. So providing all kinds of opportunities. And then we did that through play. We did that through just exploring our city and adventuring. And yeah, homeschooling was a good fit for us. And then we just, you know, through some difficult family events, I was starting to learn about just like relationship dynamics and family dynamics, and the effects of trauma in early childhood, and not just for young people, but just trauma in general and how that affects your body and how you can help your body through those kinds of things. And I found mindfulness and self-care, like all of these things were just like kind of tumbled into my path. And I am definitely a lifelong learner. And so I kind of read and researched everything I possibly could to help myself and to help them. And because we are a homeschooling family, like I wasn't able to just focus on my own, like reparenting myself or my own self-care. Everything that I was doing to kind of help myself heal the wounds of just being a human and going through life, I was doing alongside my children. And so I found really kind of playful ways of taking them along for the journey, because I didn't have the luxury of just like focusing on my own self-care at first. And I didn't give myself permission to do that at first, but I could give myself permission. It was like a gateway up to permission if I was including my children, because I was like, oh, like they're important enough to do this. We're going to do this together. And eventually I was like, well, I'm doing this for me too. And that's not selfish. That's just good self-care, right? That we need to be doing it for ourselves. But it took me first needing to give myself the permission to do it with my children. And so I've created kind of like a mindfulness course curriculum that I've taught I've taught to some homeschool families and young people, and they amaze me in their resilience and their curiosity and their openness and their connectedness to each other. And I feel like I learn just as much from them as they do from me. So yeah.
And I love that, because I think that people forget children are just small humans, and they're just experiencing it for the first time. So we need to really focus on supporting them, because if we're going through something, that's one thing. And we need to figure out the best way to go through it and to support ourselves and for healing and everything else. But we can't forget that they're going through it too. And it's the first time they've ever been through something this major.
Yeah.
So they need that much more support, and they need to see that we're able to and willing to work through it and figure it out, and say, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing either.
Totally.
This is the first parented at whatever age, or this is the first, and I'm trying to deal with my own stuff, and I'm trying to support you as well. And so I love that you've been able to kind of mesh those worlds together and make it so it's not only a healing journey for you, but also healing for your children as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really it's been both empowering and humbling all at the same time. And it is so true. Like, this is the first time that they go through it, and I feel like sometimes we or I will get frustrated or upset with young people for their big feelings, and really that comes more from like my own need to want to like fix it or heal it, or like, and if I just shine a light on that in myself, that gives me more patience, right? And it's not as triggering for me when I'm dealing with them. And just remembering, like, we're in this together. I make mistakes too, and I think that is such a beautiful lesson to teach children. Like, I'm a grown-up, but I don't know all the answers, and I promise that I will do the best I can and hold to my integrity. And if I mess up, I will apologize, and I will keep experimenting and trying to fix it until we find a solution that's working for everybody.
And that's really where the lifelong learning goes, because that's life. There's so many people frustrated, and then they just kind of give up and they go back to what was not serving them to begin with. Where instead of saying exactly what you just said of let's figure out another solution, let's work together, let's discuss different options, let's be a team together and figure this out as a team, as opposed to by yourself and good luck with not figuring it out. Because
Yeah.
that's us, right? Like, wait a minute, what this I'm an adult now, what do I have to do? I don't understand what I'm supposed to, how am I figuring this out? I don't know.
And we lean on people for support all the time, right? Like we're social beings, and that's part of it. And I think sometimes when age is involved, there's just this idea that because I'm older, I know more, and I have had more life experiences, but that doesn't mean, it doesn't necessarily translate to to me always being right or always knowing the path. And the path in front of me feels really dark and scary right now and uncomfortable. And you know what? We talk about that because I'm not helping them by saying like I know the way. They don't need somebody to tell them that I know how to do it, and they don't. They need somebody to say like we're in this together. And I might have the ultimate decision in some things, and they know that too. But when they have a voice in a lot of the other things, it's much easier to stay firm and stick to the boundaries of being like, no, this is mommy's choice ultimately, and I'll listen to what you have to say and I'll factor that in. But sometimes I do have the ultimate say in certain things, and that's okay too.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So what do you think are some tips that you have for people, either people that are going through maybe trauma in their own lives and how to work with their children in a positive way, people that are in the population that I work with, it's a lot of people who are overcoming toxic relationships and they're trying to co-parent with someone and they're going through their own trauma of trying to disassociate with this person who they've been in a bad relationship with. So, what are some tips that you have for people on how to best, I guess, navigate how to what do you do with your kids to help them see that it's okay for them to be frustrated, angry, and not know, and make them feel like they can talk about
Yeah, this is such a hard, murky question because I'm still figuring this piece out and I'm still experimenting with the words. I always tell my therapist, like, I need more words for this. What are the words? Help me practice the words because I don't feel articulate enough in translating. I know kind of like what they need. I know they need to be validated. I know they need to feel heard. I know that they need unconditional love. And those are things that I know to be true, but how does that translate into words, especially when they're coming at me with things that are activating me? And so I think really one of the first steps for me is awareness, right? Because it used to be that when I got activated, I didn't have an awareness that I was being activated. And so then I was acting from a place of reaction instead of a place of intention or response. Like the difference between reaction and response. And it seems like such a subtle shift when you start to become aware of your activation patterns, but it's enough to go, oh, wait a minute. Okay. And you can kind of take that breath and pause and realize like this has some of your things tangled up in it, and that's okay. And you might need to pause for longer. If you're really activated, you might need to walk away. You might need to say to your child, like, I really want to have this conversation with you, but I need to formulate how best to explain this to you in a way that makes sense. And I will get back to you on that. And like, that's okay too. Like, you don't have to respond right in the moment. I have learned I'm sometimes I over explain things just by nature. I really, like that's just the way that I am. So I try really hard to be mindful of the amount of talking space that I'm taking up with them, because really, and they're all different ages, which is super hard too, because different ages require different amounts of understanding, deeper understanding, or more in-depth information. And if you just kind of follow their lead, I think that's kind of like one of my catch-alls: follow their lead, meet them where they're at. Like, don't fill in the blanks for them. Just validate them and affirm them. That does sound really frustrating, or that sounds like that was really painful for you to hear, or, they just want to be seen and witnessed in whatever it is they're feeling. And then you can always put it back on them too and say, like, how do you think, why do you think that is? Or how do you think you can handle that? Or how can I support you in that? Because they are a wealth of understanding and knowledge, inner, wisdom of what it is that they need. And I feel like so many times, growing up, adults oftentimes have this, like, I know best for you. I know best for you. And so we're programmed to be like, oh, that's not something that's a wealth of knowledge within me. Like, somebody else knows better than I do. So I try to really be like, they know what's good for them in so many ways. They don't always have the prefrontal cortex to think things through all the way. And that's why they have parents, right? But like this inner deep knowledge, this wisdom that they carry, they can tell you what they need. And it might not be anything. It might be a hug. It might just be to sit there next to them. And, so meeting them where they're at and following their lead on things and really just validating and reflective listening. So like reflecting back to them what you hear them say, and then asking them if they need something else from you.
And I think sometimes they might not even know, but just the fact that they know that you're there and you're willing to listen whenever they're ready and they're ready to figure it out. And that's what I think, I've worked with kids from 6th grade to 12th grade to high school to adults. Like, I've worked the gamut now in teaching. And one of the things I really notice is exactly what you just said. We try too hard to fix the problem for the other person.
Yes.
And we're not in their life. You might be the parent and you might, have a little bit more insight and be able to kind of guide a little bit more. But, as a teacher, we can guide and we can listen, but we have to really validate what the person is saying and hear them and listen and let them come to a decision on their own, because the reality is we're not going to be there their whole lives. It's not our job to direct them their whole lives. They have to learn positive ways of how to figure it out on their own. As a teacher and as a parent, that's what we need to do, and that's what we want for ourselves. We want someone to come over to us and be like, "Hey, I know you should live your life. You're like, no."
Yeah. It almost makes you want to do the opposite just to see what happens. Like, yeah.
I'm immediately listening. I'm shutting down and I am not listening. So, I mean, why would we think that our teenager or 5-year-old or whatever, why are they going to be any different? They want to feel heard, validated, know someone's there to listen and someone's there to support them as they figure it out. And then be just, it's that guide. It's like the pedestal. It kind of holds them and keeps them from falling over all the way and lets them just know that they're safe. And I think that's really, that safety is so important for everyone involved in any kind of serious, toxicity, trauma, whatever's going on in the family. That safety net has to be there.
And and sometimes it's okay for them to fall, right? And that's so much a part of the process. And in falling, knowing like, I'm still going to be there. Yeah, you did mess up. You made a mistake. We all do that. What are we going to do to fix it? How are we going to clean up this mess? And that's like such a huge, a huge lesson.
Because just like we did, we might have had some support, but we're going to fall over and not listen because we didn't want to. And then we fall on our face, we get back up and we're like, okay, now what? And that's so important, is to call, I try to say it all the time with my son and with students, is it's not a mistake, it's a lesson.
Yeah.
So learn from that lesson. Okay, so what are we going to do differently next time?
Yep. I think it's Gabby Bernstein that says your wounds are your wisdom. And that just resonated with me so much, because it's true. Like, those are the biggest life lessons that I've learned are out of that scar tissue sometimes. So
yeah, I call it the superpowers.
Yeah.
Your brains are your superpowers. So once you are able to figure out and push through the pain and grow and learn from it, that becomes your superpower, that you were given a gift to help other people. And that's kind of like you get to help other people with that gift. So that the pain is not forever. It actually is there to help grow. So I have a question about your toys and stuff. What kind of stuff do you like suggest for different ages and like connection? What are some of the things that you sell on your store?
Yeah. So I actually have like an age guide, and you're welcome to email me or text me and say like, hey, I need something for a 3-year-old that likes X, Y, and Z, and I'm happy to forward some good fits for that. But really, everything is about engaging all the different senses. And I try to create my toys. They are back to basics, simple classics, imagination powered, open ended, on purpose, so that, you know, you might buy this today and, you know, 6 months later buy something else, and then they kind of coordinate. And that's one of the coolest things that I enjoy about going to craft shows is I always set up demo tables, and just watching children come over and engage and put different things together in ways depending on their likes and interests. It's just so fascinating to me. And especially when the parents come over and they're like, oh, my child wouldn't be interested in that because, you know, like that's too simple. And usually those are the children that end up staying the longest because they are in need of some unplugged, open-ended, disconnected play, you know, not connected, but just like unplugged play. Yeah. We do a lot of sensory bin work. So like, I think it started with one of those under the bed bins that was maybe like 5 feet by 3 feet when Layla was a baby, and it needed to be something that she could eat because she always put things in her mouth. So it was either Rice Puffs or Cheerios, and I just literally filled the whole filled it up. And so we do a lot of sensory bin work. I have a sensory bin of the month club, which is kind of a passion project of mine because it intertwines like getting mail, which kids love to get mail so much. It's so helpful for parents because, like having a go-to kit that's like ready-made and it's handmade and handcrafted and thought through, and each one is its own theme. And then we use them like during the witching hour because that's such a hard time, and when I'm trying to prepare dinner and everybody's crazy, but there's something about like sticking your hands in sand or rice or noodles or something that, that calms their senses, their nervous system. And so it also comes with like a ways to play guide and books in the theme that you can check out from the library, a list of those, and also how to expand the play at home. So like extra craft ideas, or like maybe a cooking idea or a dramatic play idea or something like that to go along with the theme. So that's really fun. And then I have kind of a mindfulness series that through all of my growth and development as a parent and kind of as my children got older, like we have a kindness kit that's super cool. It gets them practicing gratitude and sending out ripples of love, random acts of kindness. And something else that I made that is a favorite in our house for sure, and like a fan favorite that I'm like discovering, is our table talk connection cards. And so those are like conversation starter cards, and they're on really thick, durable paper. So we use them at dinner, but if spaghetti sauce gets on them, you can still wipe them. And I created them with my daughter soon after I became a single mama. And I couldn't handle our dinner ritual, which used to be like this time of like deep connection, and we would share gratitudes, and I just couldn't handle being at dinner alone, or like as an incomplete family, like all of these things that were like, I didn't feel like our family was whole. And so we just kind of abandoned dinner time for a while. And then at some point I was like, okay, I'm ready to bring this back. I need to find a way to make that happen. And I kind of art therapied my way through making a bunch of watercolor. I played, because that's one of the ways that I play, is through art. And so I made some watercolor paintings. And then on a playcation that I had with my children, my older one and I kind of researched some questions and brainstormed some questions, and then I put those on top of the watercolor paintings that I made. So we each draw a card at dinner, and we go around asking each other. It's just a really amazing way to just kind of anchor in the culture of connection in our family, and it's one I'm really proud of. Yeah.
Well, and first of all, I was going to say something, but I just want to say, first of all, I love just seeing your enthusiasm and excitement and your light and energy as you talk passionate about. That to me is always so cool, and it's just so awesome to see you get so excited about it. And everyone who's listening and watching, I mean, it's just to have those dinner conversations where you're saying, how is school, or you're not really sure what to talk about, but you want to connect with your children and you're looking for a way to do that. I mean, this sounds like such a great idea. Even just like, you could have it as like, who gets to choose the card today to start the conversation,
Yeah.
and then kind of go from there, and that just makes it's more fun and engaging, and and then you just continue on naturally with whatever you were going to talk about from there. But to really have that possibility of questions coming up and conversation, I think is great, so everyone feels included.
Yeah.
In the
We talk a lot about rituals, and big parts of getting through this life transition for me has been rooted in ritual and rhythm and creating these really intentional moments. And they don't have to be very long, as long as you just kind of do them consistently. It's kind of like your family's own magic. And these connection cards are one of the ways that we kind of infuse some family magic. We also do like a candle lighting, and we sit in a circle and we each choose, we share gratitudes with each other, and each choose a card from a deck that we have, and it's just like all these little rituals that you may or may not be aware of doing in your family. But in the table talk, so I have these table talk connection cards, but I also have a table talk connection course. So I talk a lot about this culture of connection that we're building and how to become more intentional about it and more aware of what we're handing over to the next generation. And is it something that you want to be handing over, or do you want to tweak it a little bit? And in my case, I needed to tweak it a lot. And so I'm starting to do that more. And they, like I said, they don't have to be very long. It could be 5 minutes here or 5 minutes there, but we build our children's trust in like little tiny blips, right? It's just the tiny little things over and over and over again. And that's how we build trust with each other. And so infusing some of these connections and these rituals helps to build the trust up, so that when they do have those really rocky times, they know that you're going to be there and you'll be willing to listen because you've built that foundation already. Yeah.
And somebody who is listening or watching and saying to themselves, I'm just so concerned about my child and I'm not really sure where to start. I mean, this would be a great opportunity to see it is possible to rebuild, to create connection, to make everyone feel included, and to be part of the recovery process and learning how to be a new family.
Yeah.
And just an experience now, and it's okay, and we're going to be okay and learn and grow, and the experience for everyone. So thank you so much for sharing all of your wealth of knowledge and all your expertise with everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And children and that's children's, like, play is their way of communicating. And if you really think about it, it's our way of communicating too. We just don't realize it. And we each have these play profiles, and Stuart Brown talks about this. And I try to look at the things that bring out that light that you were talking about in me. And then I think about that in my children. What play are they engaging in that really draws out that light? And where do we overlap? Because those are the things that you can do so easily, and you'll light each other up and you'll feed off of each other's energy in that way. And I don't know, when you tap back into play, it really brings a different kind of energy shift and joy. And so I hope that everybody, grown up and child, going through hard times, just have an awareness of that. Like, what is it inside of you that needs to come out, and how can you do that, and embrace the whole experience of it. So yeah.
And a lot of the healing comes from reconnecting with that child within.
Yes.
I mean, so what better way to do that than through play? And then if you have children, play with your children. I mean, it just like, it goes hand in hand for your healing and for their healing.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. How would people, and of course we'll put this in the comments as well, but how would people follow you if they wanted to follow you on all your social media stuff?
Yeah, so it's Mama May I Shop. That's the name of my store, and my handle on Instagram and Facebook. And then you can follow my blog at jessicaperkins.com, and that's all about intentional, playful parenting. So there's some principles and some guides, how to play with your kids, free guide that you can download, and just some self-reflection and how I'm infusing this kind of stuff in our everyday life. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now, I saw a few people come on, and then I'm not sure if anyone is on right now. Sometimes it says no one, but there's actually someone on. So if anyone is on and they have any questions, what I've been doing is I take the interview that we do and I create a podcast and a YouTube and all these different things with it. So I stopped really going through and answering questions. I didn't really see any questions as we were going. I just saw people pop in and kind of just say hi. But if you're just tuning in now, if you have any questions for us that you would like us to answer, this would be a great time to ask those questions. And of course, you know, if you're just popping on and didn't get to watch the whole thing from before, you know, we are talking about mindfulness and you know, learning through play and how to deal with, you know, the after effects of trauma and, you know, divorce and all that kind of stuff. So if anybody has any questions for any of those things, please feel free to ask those questions now. And of course, I know Jessica, and you know, obviously me too. I will go back and answer
Yeah.
questions you have. If you had to watch the recording, don't worry, you didn't miss out on any, you know, participation with us. We will go back and answer whatever questions that you had, you know, later on. So don't feel bad if this is, you know, whatever time it is, we'll go back.
Yeah, that, and I love the internet for these kinds of connections. Hearing other women, especially, share their stories, gave me the courage to break the cycle that I needed to break to be where I am, and I'm so grateful for those women. And they probably don't even know who they are, but so I am happy to connect with people and answer any questions that I can with my experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And, you know, I will definitely be seeing you. Thank you so much for coming on your Wednesday and coming to hang out with all of us. And I guess we'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be part of this. Thank you.
Welcome. Bye, everybody.
Bye.